Hi everybody, this is Meg from Farmgirl Flowers. Today I'm going to be showing you how to style 10 stems of bearded iris, which look like this right here. They're so cool. Before we start with styling, we're going to need a few things. So you want to grab your vase. The iris are going to come and be pretty tall, so you want a pretty tall vase for these. You could choose something that's even taller than this. The stems of the iris, let me show you, are going to come and actually be super tall. You could totally grab a taller vase than this and just leave them on their long stems totally really tall. But for today, I'm gonna end up breaking these stems down a little bit more, and so I'm gonna have a vase about this size. So just figure out how tall you wanna leave the stems of the iris and then choose a vase based on that height. I've got my flower food, which came with my irises. I've got a pair of clippers. You can also use a pair of kitchen shears or whatever scissors you have around, that's fine. And I've got some water. I'm gonna go ahead and fill up my vase. I'm gonna fill up my vase about 2/3 to 3/4 full, and I'm gonna go ahead and add my flower food. Once you've got your vase full of water, you've got your clippers, you're ready to start designing. Like I said before, your stems are gonna come and they're gonna be super long. If you do wanna trim them, you'll wanna make sure that you're cutting at an angle, and you don't wanna cut the stem below where the bud is growing off of it. You just wanna cut it at an angle right at the base of the bud here. So this leaf is great, I'm gonna leave that one on, but any leaves that are gonna fall below the water line here, you just wanna remove those so that we can keep the bacteria growth to a minimum. Any leaves that are left on can sort of add bacteria to the water, and we don't want that because we want our water to be free of bacteria to keep our flowers healthy. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start adding some blooms. Again, I might trim some of the buds away from the big stem. Still gonna add those in. And I actually think I'm gonna leave this one pretty tall. Yeah. As you're adding your stems, you're gonna wanna make sure that you're measuring before you cut. So what I mean by that is hold up your stem next to the vase and kind of imagine where the height of the flower that you'd like, and then cut so that you are cutting to the height of the flower. You can always cut it more if you'd like, but I always measure before I cut. One of the challenging but interesting things about designing with irises is that they are a very linear flower, and what I mean by that is they sort of have this one direction that they're growing in. They're not like some of our other things that maybe are a little bit branchy. It can be a challenge to design when your flower is very linear, but I think one of the keys that can really help you with designing with flowers like that is to make sure you're staggering the heights of the flowers. So what I mean by that is you're leaving some flowers tall, and then you're having others sort of at different heights below them to sort of add visual interest and dimension to the overall arrangement. This will really help you when you're designing with a flower that has more of this linear shape with a big bloom at the top. You're gonna get a lot of bang for your buck with this flower because it's gonna have multiple blooms per stem. The blooms at the top are going to open up first, and then the blooms following that will sort of open up after this one is sort of past the end of its life cycle. Once the top blooms and goes past its prime, you can just snip the head off of the top stem and remove it so that the next bloom on the way down the stem can open up. They will continue to open, so this will be a sort of longer lasting arrangement. These blooms might only last for a few days, maybe a week, but you'll continue to have the other blooms on your stems open up as time passes. This arrangement will probably last for a solid week or two, so just keep that in mind as you're designing. Move this back over. And continue on. I think I want that a little shorter. as I'm designing, I'm kind of always adjusting the flowers. For every flower that I add, I kind of make an adjustment somewhere else in my arrangement to make sure that it's all staying looking great from every angle. I'm always sort of turning the vase to look at it from different sides. And a flower that I might have put in before, I might even just want to decide I would like to trim it a little bit shorter. So don't be afraid to sort of rearrange as you go, move things around as you need to. Your arrangement's sort of a living, breathing thing, so don't be afraid to sort of rearrange and play around with it when you need to. I'm looking at what I've decided is the front right now, and I think I want one more like big bloom on this side but low. So I'm just gonna go ahead and trim that, turn it around so I can see from this side. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to give it a little bit more of a trim. And I have this little trick that I do when your vase is getting full towards the end of your arrangement where I kind of twist the stem in between the others and it'll sort of help work its way in there, and that way you don't have to really force it in there. You can kind of just gently guide it in. All right. I think this is looking really good. It's definitely very whimsical. It's very asymmetrical. I still actually have a couple of stems here that I didn't manage to fit into my large vase. So if that happens to you and you're using sort of a more medium-sized vase and you end up having some stems left over, this is a great flower that you could sort of trim these and put them in a bud vase or another little vase in your home, and really you'll get sort of two arrangements in one because you might have some extra stems at the end of your big vase. So you could even trim, you know, take this leaf off, trim these and sort of stagger them in a bud vase, or another, you know, even just leaving a couple of these stems really tall in a taller vase would be nice. So you've got options, but if you have a couple of stems left over, feel free to just put a couple of them in another smaller vase. Once you're finished with the design of your vase and you're feeling good about what it looks like, you're going to want to find a place for it in your home that's away from any direct sunlight and away from any heat sources. This will help ensure that your flowers last for as long as possible. There's another thing that you can do to help ensure that your flowers last as long as possible, and that is to change the water and maintain them every day. So I'll show you how to do that quickly. It's really easy. You just grab the flowers around the base of the stems here, lift them out gently. You'll want to get rid of this water, and you can wipe out the inside of the vase if there's any debris or dirt in there. Fill it with fresh water, and if you have any leftover flower food, you can go ahead and pour that in. If not, it's totally fine to just replace it with fresh water. Every day when you replace the water, you're also going to want to make sure that you give your stems a fresh trim. So I would just recommend at an angle, trim about 1/4 to 1/2 inch just to keep your flowers really fresh. Then you can go ahead and sort of squeeze your stems together and just replace them in your vase. And you can sort of rearrange if anything's gotten moved around when you had to replace the water. This is also a great time to check and see if any of your stems are maybe past the point of their bloom. So if any of the blooms are sort of starting to brown or wither, you can just go ahead and remove those stems, and they're going to be replaced by these next little buds that are waiting to bloom. Lots of different life cycles on the same stem with irises, but that's totally normal, and you can maintain your arrangement over time by just going ahead and removing any of the stems that are maybe past their life cycle and replacing them with these blooms that are about to pop open. This has been Meg for Farmgirl Flowers, showing you how to style 10 stems of bearded iris. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.